Franchise. Baseball is back, and so is a Let's Be Frank podcast. Welcome to another season of your favorite Dodger podcast, Let's Be Frank podcast. I am Frank Lopez with my co-host Frank Martinez. So much to cover, so much to go over. But more than anything, we're just excited to be back. Frank, how are you doing, sir?
There was no holdout. There wasn't, we weren't locked out. Just a lot of things going on, but I'm doing great.
Yeah, man. No, that's good. That's good to hear. Let's get into that a little bit, man. I know it's been a while. It's been about a year since the last time we released an episode. Not to say we haven't recorded any, but that's how crazy things are, man. We've talked baseball for an hour, recorded it, and then just never got around to releasing them. So we have those in the bank. Maybe we'll release them as NFTs and fund the next year, the Let's Be Frank podcast or something. But yeah, man, how are you, man? Like, give me some life updates. I know there's been some new developments with you on the personal side. Let the franchise know.
Yeah, for sure. So probably the biggest one is naturally just another child.
Yeah, so squad.
We added to the squad. We got our starting five.
Nice.
Little Jonah, he's 6 months actually yesterday.
Congrats, man.
So thank you. Yeah, it's just I think it balances out. We had the three girls in the middle, and then we have it bookended with our boys. So it's pretty cool. Josiah got his little brother. He's super happy, as you can imagine.
Oh, for sure.
And he'll literally will sit and talk baseball with them, of course.
Here you go, planting the seed, man.
Yeah, he's just looking at him and smiling and stuff.
That's good, man. That's awesome. No, congrats, dude. That's big. 5, dude. 5. Frank, party of 7.
That's us. Yep.
Damn, dude. Well, that's good, man. That's good. I'm super happy for you guys. That's awesome. You guys are good for it. I know we have our hands full here with the puppy. I can only imagine, with five children running around. But yeah, man. No, thank you. Congrats. I know. Last time we spoke, you were already on your weight loss journey and your fitness journey, and you were already accomplished at that point. I know you had a recent setback, right?
Talk to me about that. It's been a little challenging because I broke my foot. As you know, I've become an avid hiker. Really, really enjoy that. It's become a real big thing for me and my routine. And the one day I didn't go hiking, I decided to go play flag football.
Oh yeah.
And nature or something had its say. And anyway, I broke my little bone in the ankle, but nonetheless, it's kind of hampered me and debilitated me a little bit. So I've been having to have a lot more time here.
Yeah. That's good, man. Find the blessings in those types of situations. You'll get back on it, but I think you've already created all the right habits, So
thank you.
And you have the right mindset for it. So yeah, you'll be back in no time, man. But yeah, man, on the personal side over here, it's also been an eventful year. I've had some life updates, some life changes. I'm engaged now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that happened last summer. Yeah, last summer. Finally popped the question after a little more than 6 years of being together, and she said yes. Luckily. But yeah, so now it's all the planning. It's all the this and that of the wedding and what we want to do, what we don't want to do. So that's just trying to have as much fun with that as possible. Trying to make that as fun of a process as possible. Because
we enjoy the journey, man. Once.
Yeah. So just trying to keep that in mind. Trying to have that mindset because we only do it once, so we just want to make sure it's
if you do it right
all the way through. Yeah, hopefully, right. But yeah, so there's that, and then just work changes, job changes, stuff like that. Just trying to find the right fit. I think I'm in the right place now, which is good. I've been where I'm at since around that time. No coincidences. All that stuff kind of goes hand in hand. So yeah, man. But all in all, I'm just excited to get back on the mic, talk some baseball, talk some other stuff too, and just get back at it, man. I know the franchise. It wasn't a holdout, but we kind of left them hanging for a while. So we appreciate everybody that's back and listening again.
Yeah, most definitely, man. So there's a ton of baseball to talk, ton of things to go over. What do you want to jump into?
Yeah, we could just, it wouldn't make any sense to just recap an entire season from last year. So let's just I would think we just go into the now. Lockout's over, baseball's back. There's going to be a 162 game season, a bunch of double headers. It's going to be a little bit wonky, but it's going to be 162, which is cool. It's going to be a little unique in the sense that there will be a bunch of those double headers. But April 8th is opening day for the Dodgers. I believe it's a Friday. I think it's in Colorado, I want to say. And I think the following Thursday is the home opener against Cincinnati, I want to say. So that's coming up quick. It's going to be a short spring training. I think means good things for hitters. Hitters, I think, like a shorter spring training. Pitchers, it's going to be just a little bit harder to ramp up and get stretched out. But nonetheless, I mean, I think it'll be on cue. It'll be good. It'll be what it needs to be. So yeah, man. Let's go over a couple of things the Dodgers have done here this offseason to retain some guys or to acquire some others. The first and foremost, it's going to always start and end with Mr. Clayton Kershaw, right? He's back on a 1-year deal. I think it's a lot of incentive. I think it's incentive ridden. So I think the base, I want to say somewhere around $17 million. And I think he can make up to about $28 million on incentives, which is the deal for Clayton Kershaw right now. I think that's kind of, a win-win all the way around. What do you think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Even with the incentives, though, I think it certainly is somewhat of a hometown discount. Which you got to admire, man. You got to admire the willingness to kind of put team first in a sense. Yeah. Considering the fact that reportedly his decision came down to, as suspected, the Dodgers and Rangers. And it's nice for him to say that or identify that he's got a better opportunity to win here than he did over there.
For sure.
Take that, Corey.
Yeah, and the Rangers have done a lot of good things here in the offseason too, right? They acquired obviously Corey Seager, took him away from us, and good for him. Took a great deal for him long term. Right. He's secured. Doesn't have to pay taxes on that salary either down in Texas. And I just think personality said the whole thing. I think it works for him. So good for him, on that end. I think they got Marcus Semien, right, from who's with Toronto and with Oakland, just an all-star. I mean, just a really, really good player. And then they've added pieces around that too. And I think they're headed in a good direction. But at this point of Clayton Kershaw's career, it's kind of the here and now. Let's win right now. And I mean, just in general, who gives you a better chance at the Dodgers? I wouldn't think anybody gives you a better chance, So that, and I think more for the hometown discount, I think that's more on the years side, right? Because I think he could have maybe squeaked an extra year out of a different team, but even him, I don't know if he wants to commit more than 1 year at a time at this point of his career,
Right.
So that's where it becomes a win-win. So, and obviously on the money side, incentives up to 28 million, 17 base isn't good really good for a pitcher of that caliber. But also incentives up to 28. You think, oh man, you might have to spend $28 million on a pitcher that age. If he's getting $28 million just because he earned it, so it's then there's going to be production and availability there, right? Because obviously there's injury questions, right? He didn't finish last season on his terms. There was a couple injuries and it's arm stuff, right? So that's there's a little bit of risk there, right? So the incentives make all the sense in the world. And just credit to the front office, just nailing it every single time. It's just such a well-oiled machine and just so creative with the way they structure contracts and stuff. And we'll get into other players' contracts and how they're structured. But yeah, I mean, Clayton Kershaw will always deserve his own segment. But needless to say, we're just stoked that he's back and, one step closer to just being a career lifer with the Dodgers, right?
Hopefully. Yep.
Yeah. At this point, I mean, I hope that they make that somewhat of a priority, and
well, it seems like they did. Apparently, the first call once the lockout ended was to Kershaw. That's and awesome. Not one of the other big names, which just shows you a lot about the class and the organization. And say what you will, and compare and contrast that with other organizations and how they treat their legends. It's certainly nice to be on this side of things.
Yeah. And we'll get into that, right? Another career guy with a different team might move to this side of the country. But yeah, another acquisition was Hanser Alberto. Hanser Alberto is an infielder. Plays with Baltimore. Has played with Baltimore, Kansas City, and also the Rangers a little bit. Apparently this guy just hits lefties. This guy just hits lefties. Plays a couple defensive positions, and we know that that's been an issue with our squad, and it's gone on a little too long. It's a little weird, man. Like our roster looks so different than it had in the past few years, but for some reason that's always been like a sore spot for us is how we do versus left-handed pitching. I think this team is going to look a lot different with the Trey Turners and Mookie's in there still, and there's different guys, but this is also going to help towards that depth. So that's a nice little addition, depth, call it what you want. Jimmy Nelson is back. They haven't announced the deal yet, but it looks like he's back, and they're gonna basically rehab him and bet on his upside a little bit there. So there's been some moves in those regards, but and some departures. Joe Kelly's are not there anymore, the Corey Seagers aren't there anymore, and other guys are pending. So I'm sure I'm missing a couple, right?
I mean, Kenley is the big name that's out there.
Yeah. Kenley had a really productive season last year. Obviously, we all have a complicated relationship with him, right? Because only we know him at his worst, and other teams, they're going to look at his stats. And yeah, there's been some big stage moments where he hasn't come through, but there's been some big stage moments where he has come through too. And he just has that experience. And more than anything, I think any team could benefit from having like just a guy that's been used to being a bullpen leader, really, on their squad. And let's say it's a team with a bunch of young, talented guys. Like, well, who better to have than a guy like that, right? To kind of just keep that bullpen in check and make sure everybody's pointing in the right direction. So whether that's going to be with the Dodgers, whether or not, what they're saying is he's looking for one last big payday, before he calls it, not necessarily a career, but before he starts taking less money. And the numbers say he deserves it, man. I mean, that's just kind of what it is. Because of that, and because of what the Dodgers have as options in the bullpen, I personally don't see it lining up for him to be returning in LA.
Right.
I wouldn't completely close the door on that because I don't know what other teams are offering necessarily, but I mean, if he doesn't come back, man, I mean, he's hands down the greatest Dodger closer of all time, right? I know there's some nostalgia out there that's going to want people that people are going to remember the times of Eric Gagne, but Eric Gagne's success never really coincided with the Dodgers' success. You know what I mean? And we know what helped him be as good as he was, right? And it wasn't drawn out. It wasn't a long period of time, right? It was dynamic, and I don't think what he did will ever really be done again from a closing perspective. But since Kenley's been good, the Dodgers have been good. Let's just put it that way, right? I mean, he came in early. I remember he was Javi Guerra's setup man, and then kind of took that closer role, and he's a champion. He's a champion, and he won a ring with us, and it's one of those guys I think we'll remember him a lot more fondly than what it felt like in the moment, I think.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, some might look at Game 2, 2017. There's other reasons for that though, and that loss at least, in addition to Kenley, of course. But yeah, I think when you look back at the totality of his stay with the Dodgers or his career, it's going to be favorable. There's no way to look at it anything other than that, especially when you ultimately do have the championship to look back on.
Yeah. And he's just been an anchor, man. And like I said, his success has been the Dodgers' success, and incrementally the bullpen became a strength. Think about that. Like, it was a weak spot early on in this little dynasty that we have. Let's call it the Kershaw dynasty, right? The Kershaw Kenley dynasty, since they've been around. The bullpen was the weak spot, and he kind of was the only good one there. And little by little, he's been there while it's built itself up. And then last postseason, the bullpen was at what everybody was most afraid of with the Dodgers, right? Like that was kind of like the thing where it's like, oh my God, you don't want to Kelly and Trinan and Kenley and Brusdar Graterol, like, right? But he's always been the anchor of that. And in a time where bullpen roles have just been fluid, like everything's changed. Like what we thought was the norm is not the norm anymore. Roles have changed, but he's kind of held on to that closer role and embodied it. And yeah, man, like I'll appreciate it, and there's been times where, in the moment it's, there's specific criticisms, maybe if there was his reactions to a couple things, and maybe mechanically, even like when you're just looking at the way he pitches, where I've had my questions, but mean, the guy looks like his focus was always to win, and honestly, what else can what else can we
Yeah,
really
pitching through his the ailments he had, the health issues,
yeah.
the heart ailment. Like, you got you got to be a special cynic to or cynical type to not look at Kenley with some favorability. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book remains open on that. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but we do feel like he deserves his day. And yeah, I don't think anybody's going to really wear. I don't think anybody's going to wear 74 again in Dodger history. I don't know if anybody would want to. It's such a random number.
You're right.
but I think that belongs to Kenley. I think we'll see that up and retired at some point. So thanks to Kenley. And yeah, man, I mean, aside from acquisitions, there's one big pending free agent out there that the Dodgers are linked to. And it seemed like just a fun idea, I think, at the beginning of the offseason. Like, hey, let's get this guy. Let's get this guy. Because the Dodgers have spoiled us, and really anybody has been realistic to acquire, for the last, 8 years. Or 9 years now at this point, I think. But, with him, it became more and more of reality because the Atlanta Braves did not show the interest in Freddie Freeman that I think he wanted from the get-go. Right. But I do want to touch on that. If you're the Atlanta Braves, right, you just won a World Series. You know how hard it is to win a World Series, right? Freddie Freeman's contract ends. Okay. You got the best years probably of Freddie Freeman's career, right? His prime, right? You got Freddie Freeman's prime and you got a ring at the most affordable he'll probably ever be, right? Not counting the very end of his career. I think a lot of us are like, well, yeah, it's obvious he's going to re-sign him there like early on, right? But if you're the Braves, you have to explore every option, right? You have to really weigh everything and see what's best for the team. You got a ring out of the guy, right? And now you're going to be essentially paying him for, not to say he's not going to be extremely productive, he's going to be, but you're going to essentially at this point, from this point on, you're going to pay him for what he's done, right? Is it a slam dunk that you got to re-sign the guy? I don't think so, man. So like, I know a lot of people are giving the Braves a hard time because of it, but I kind of do understand it. I don't know where you stand on that.
Yeah, the thing about it, I think that from the optics standpoint, if not, well, two things. Before optics, it's just the reality. How much respect is he due, and he's due all the respect. So like we mentioned earlier with Kershaw, first call, is Kershaw the most talented available free agent or the highest productive free agent available this offseason? Absolutely not. His prime is behind him, but based off what he's done, what he's meant to the organization, the franchise, the fan base, that's the first call. And that's how you build a culture, when people feel wanted, when people feel not just wanted but respected. And I think there was a way for the Braves to, even if they wanted to move on from Freddie Freeman, I think there was a way for them to have him still feel respected, and then ultimately have it be his decision to move on. Right.
Yeah.
And that not really impact anything going forward. Because right now it just looks like they're really cheap, and the fact is they're paying some really, really elite level talent bargain contract deals. And,
yeah, I don't know how they keep getting away with that.
and so when it came time to actually, they had the room, they could pay Freddie Freeman, and they not only did they decide they didn't want to, but they really just kind of pulled the rug from underneath him and said, yeah, we're moving on. So the Dodgers aren't like that, and that's what it's really, just from authentically, it's really good to root for a team and a franchise that you believe is going to do, more times than not, they're going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Not just, morally, let's say, or just from a respect factor,
yeah,
but also the right thing as it pertains to competing and putting the best product out there.
Right. And how it all has to stem from that, right? Because if that's not there, nothing else is. Like, people can act or act all they want or pretend all they want that they want the Dodgers to do the most, feel good thing every time, right? I mean, I do believe they operate ethically, but they want
ethically,
yeah. But they want people to just kind of tug at our heartstrings every single time with certain things. But at the end of the day, if the Dodgers go 60 and 102, the stands aren't going to be as full. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to be
Right.
a good situation, right? So, it seems like, it makes all the sense in the world what you're saying there. There is a way to do it. And the Clayton Kershaw comparison, is the perfect one, I think. The way Kershaw's played out, though, right? Because there's a couple different times where we signed Kershaw to extensions and deals and here and this and that. And with Kershaw, the Dodgers didn't win until 2020, right? There was a couple times before that where we had to re-sign him or extend him, or he opted out. We got to bring him back, whatever this.
Right.
The fact that the Dodgers hadn't won a World Series yet, I think weighed heavily on that, right?
Good point.
It's like, okay, this is a piece we need to kind of get over that hump, right? This just so happens with the Braves that he's gone right after they won the World Series. I think that makes things, it just weighs things differently, and I think that, say they didn't win the World Series and they were close and they feel like they're going to get there or whatever, then they're like, okay, well then, yeah, I mean, who's going to be a better option at first base than Freddie Freeman? You're going to have to pay him. Like, that's just, but now you're thinking of like, hey, we got our ring.
Yeah.
It just makes more sense to play for the long term here. We know Olson's going to be able to give us a little more of a team friendly deal, right? Some depth and more flexibility going forward and this and that. And so I think that mattered, right? So this guy got essentially getting punished for winning the World Series in a sense. And he'll have his day, don't get me wrong, but it's just weird the way this whole thing shook out, whereas with Kershaw, by the time they won the World Series, it's like, okay, he's at a different stage of his career. We can get away with doing shorter deals, this and that. So now we can, do that. But if he was in a position where he's trying to get a 5-6 year deal still, and we hadn't won a World Series, that would have been tough, man. It would have been tough. I'm like, oh, like it would have been a different situation, So, so it's crazy how those two things, how the way things are shaking out there and what it means potentially for the Dodgers of all teams, the team that he eliminated on his way and finally got past, right? And I don't know, man. Is it I don't know, like it's crazy that we're in a position where like, hey, we can add. This guy was MVP, what, 2 seasons ago?
Yep.
2 seasons ago, NL MVP, right? World Series champion last year, right? We can add him to our team and just be even better than what we already are, or we can not add him and just still be really freaking good. Like it's still probably favorites, to do the most this season. So, it's just crazy to be in that position, man. Crazy to be in that position. And the reports are that the Dodgers have offered him a 4-year deal just with a higher annual, average annual value. Which just seems to be the Dodger way, like, hey, we'll pay you what you want to get paid. We're just not going to give you the years on the back end, right? So when you look at a Corey Seager deal, the moment I saw that number, I was like, oh yeah, there's no way the Dodgers were going to do that, right? Yeah. And there's going to be room for maybe one guy like that on the roster, 2 guys, maybe tops, right? And for us, that's our Mookie Betts, generational talent. Not to say Freddie Freeman is not, but we have that guy on the roster already. So it's like, oh man. And then we got to look forward to guys like, the Buehlers and, pitchers are going to be different when it comes to years and all that. But Bellinger, if he bounces back and returns to form, like, do we want to let him walk? Probably not. Like, you just don't know. Right. But it's a strong possibility that it comes to the Dodgers. A few other teams are in play. The Red Sox were in the mix or seem to be in the mix. Padres kind of weaseled their way into the conversation, I guess, right after the Tatis report. And then the Blue Jays seems like they got their guy in Kyle Schwarber. So I don't know if they're going to really spend on Freeman, but
the Blue Jays got Matt Chapman.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. So the Phillies got Schwarber, right? So
yeah.
Phillies got Schwarber. Yeah. Sorry. That, and then the Yankees kept Rizzo. So it's like, okay, well, people are falling off the list. It's really what Dodgers, Red Sox, maybe Padres at this point. Like, and
yeah, Padres, you need to do something with Hosmer before they can add Freeman.
For sure. I
would think.
Yeah. I mean, the DH is there now, but there's a few other guys that kind of want to rotate into that. But yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy and exciting, like to kind of be at this point in Dodger history where that's a possibility again, right? We've had these conversations about Mookie Betts and, guys like that, but, here we are again, right? You think at some point like, oh, like they're not gonna, okay, they've got a bunch of contracts that they can't do another one. Like, well, no, those contracts that they were signing before were so good. Those acquisitions that we're getting before were so good that we're in a position where we can keep doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the key, and but yeah, man. I mean, end of the day, do you think Freddie Freeman's a Dodger?
I think there's a high probability of that. I'd be shocked if it doesn't happen at this point. I feel the same exact way. I felt the same exact way 2 other occasions. Okay. Giancarlo Stanton, that was a trade.
Yeah.
And Bryce Harper. So, I'm not going to be emotionally invested in it at this point. Obviously, it'd be exciting if the signing goes through. I think you're alluding to this. I think Freddie Freeman is a luxury, more than a necessity for the Dodgers at this point. It'd be nice. Yes, obviously losing the left-handed production from Corey Seager departure. But I mean, Max Muncy, all indications are that he is healthy with that elbow.
Yeah.
So, you should expect all-star level production from him. Cody Bellinger, it's looking like he's going to have a good bounce back year. We're hoping for that. So it's not going to hurt too. I mean, it's not as much as a necessity as I think other people want to think. So if it happens, it'd be great just from the production standpoint, but also who he is as a player, the type of guy he is. He fits right into the culture of the team and the organization. And it'd be great all around. So do I hope it happens? I guess yes, but I'm not overly invested in it emotionally happening.
Yeah. It's crazy. We're kind of training to that now, huh? Like other fan bases don't have that ability, right? Like, back in the day, you traded Matt Kemp, and it was a mess. It was a mess when we traded Matt Kemp. Now it's like, Kershaw, if you sign with the freaking Rangers, like, it's different, man. We're lucky in that way too. But yeah, you mentioned it. Just the culture of the Dodgers, like they're have such a good reputation just for taking care of players, right? They're built for it organizationally, right? And Freddie Freeman, he wears on his sleeve how just his family, that dynamic he has with his wife and his kids. It's just a beautiful situation. Well, the Dodgers are built for that. Then, like they're known for taking care of players and what their needs are and all that stuff. And I think the only thing that might be making him hesitant, not the only thing, I'm sure there's other offers and stuff, but there might be a situation where he's like, do I want to do that? Do I want to go to the obvious best team? Do I want to be that? It's obviously not, Kevin Durant's a different situation because Freeman's coming off a championship, right? He's coming off from a situation where he was on top, but kind of that situation where it's like, oh, I'm just going to join the team that's already great. Like, I don't know. I feel like because right after the World Series, they were interviewing him, and he was saying he wanted to go back to Atlanta. Like, he's like, yeah, like I'll come back. Like, they just, do the right thing, But now over here, it's I think the situation is like, I think the challenge might be part of his what he throws into the equation. Like, okay, what opportunity?
Yeah.
Like I think there might be a situation with him in particular, just by the type of guy that he seems like he is. But hey, you got a home here, Freddie. And I think he's from Orange County, I want to say, or something like that, right? So he knows the area. I think he grew up an Angels fan, in all fairness, but I can imagine he has family over here, and that could be a good situation for him too, and on the personal side. But so
number 5 is available.
Sure is, man. Sure is. I think, I think it'll be available. Yeah. They're not going to retire. I think you got to sign that second contract with the team in order to really qualify for getting your number retired, right?
Well, especially the Dodgers with their standards.
Yeah. So, yeah, you got to be a Hall of Famer. That's true. So, yeah, man, it's interesting and it's exciting. So we'll see what happens on the Freddie Freeman front. But as far as other needs the Dodgers might have, if there are any, is there anything that like really glares out to you?
Yeah, I think obviously you can never have enough pitching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that last year. So obviously starting pitching is going to be something you want to focus on. Andrew Friedman said as much. And so the Trevor Bauer situation is a big one.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons.
Yeah.
And but mainly the production. If you can expect a somewhat of a full season or a full season from him, that helps a lot. Or that at least it sets into play a lot of what you might do and what your approach might be with respect to the starting rotation. So there's some trade opportunities out there potentially. Obviously, probably the biggest name is Luis Castillo from the Reds. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But even if not, you could always, like we always talk about, you could always trust that the team's looking at options and opportunities. They have great training staff, great development to really get the most out of it and maximize a lot of the pitchers. So
yeah. And we'll get to the whole Bauer situation in a sec. But like when you look at options outside of that, okay, it's like obviously Walker Buehler, right? Clayton Kershaw, Julio Diaz. Past that, right? There's question marks. I think Tony Gonsolin is in the conversation, obviously, because we just need a guy to eat innings and he's formidable, But as far as like, starting rotation options after that, I think you're gonna maybe see some depth pieces there, guys that can eat some innings, guys that are options, because we saw some additions late last year that just didn't work out with the Danny Duffys and the Cole Hamill. So I don't think they're done doing stuff like that. I think they can be a little more creative with it, and hopefully a little bit more youth, guys with actual arms, but so yeah, I think some of those types of things. Dustin May is supposed to come back at some point this season. When a guy comes back from an arm injury, I wouldn't really count on him for anything that season he comes back,
Yeah, so, anything's a bonus from him this year.
Right. So and if it just makes all the sense to have a well-rounded rotation, because if he does come back, maybe we could put him in a situation where he doesn't have to get fully built up into a starter and he can just be dynamic for 1-2 innings, and then next year put him back in the rotation. I think that might be best case scenario. But yeah, man, the big name is Trevor Bauer, right? Trevor Bauer's under investigation from the league, right? For what do you call it? Is that domestic violence? That could consider domestic violence, or I don't know.
I think it'll fall under that policy.
Yeah, at this point, right? And this happened, maybe a quarter into the season last year, right? Where he gets, where these accusations come out against him, right? Horrific accusations, right? If you ask me, right? Like terrible accusations come out, and pretty much from the get, he said that it was a lie, none of it was true. And this is a situation that we've seen itself play out different ways, and different outcomes have come from it, right? So naturally, us just being like involved. So I'm pretty sure you were as kept up in the situation as I was, right? And more stuff comes out, and you read over the situation, and I don't know, man. Like I said, how we've been trained as far as from like a free agency perspective to not be emotional about certain things.
Yeah.
I think for me in this situation, that trained mentality kind of helped me see things objectively throughout the entire time. And I was like, oh my God, this might be a situation where somebody is out to get him. Like I just, from everything that I gathered, he went through, hearings, he went through a whole trial, the whole thing, right? Legal proceedings, like everything from the legal side, right? And at the end of the day, they concluded that, yeah, this girl had different intentions than what she was accusing him of, and it just, at the end of the day, he was exonerated legally. That doesn't mean, nothing will come from the league perspective of it, but this is something that you and I haven't really discussed. So we're doing it in real time here, but like, just what, I don't know, like, what was your process like throughout the entire time, like from the get to like now? Like, did you think that his days were done as a Dodger? Like, how did that play out for you?
Oh no, I mean, I always felt like you had to wait and see, just because there's a lot of different dynamics, and one of the big ones is that he's a celebrity. He's a celebrity athlete, a rich man, and so you have to give room for, obviously, number one, people to have their day in court, but also for the possibility that there's ulterior motives on another side. Now, you can do that tactfully, without, while honoring an alleged victim, right,
Mhm.
or an accuser, I guess is better said, and just wait and see. And I think the Dodgers were always going to do that. We had a little bit of experience with Julio Urias, obviously, much smaller in scale,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but even then there were people calling for the Dodgers to outright dismiss Urias right away.
Yeah.
Um, we were able to see that situation play out. And so, yeah, I didn't think that there was, I thought that obviously if any of it was even really uh, proven to be true, then he probably would never play baseball again, let alone play for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So as it stands now, I would imagine he's going to probably play majority of the season.
Mhm.
Maybe, I mean, you might factor in the fact that Rob Manfred doesn't have the best relationship with him personally.
Right.
So maybe there's some feelings there as to how it'll play out with discipline. But overall, there isn't much that MLB can go off of to prevent him from playing.
Zero precedent with this stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To give him anything more than what looks like now, maybe already time served and a fine, like
Yeah.
that's kind of looks like what it might be. But uh yeah, man. I mean, let's just get right to it. Like look, 2017, historical year, just in the history of humanity, right? Where um that's when we can kind of mark the start of the Me Too movement, right? That's when because of situations like you know uh, Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby, things, those types of situations. Um, it empowered a large, just a large group of women and even in some instances men to come out against accusers, right? And to say like, hey, this is a story that resonates with me. Oh my God, I'm not the only one. And a big movement started, right? And that's how those things happen, right? The one person needs to come out, and then you get different voices everywhere, and then eventually you get the attention of us, right? People that maybe don't go through those struggles, right? That don't have those types of situations happen to us, and it's like, oh my God, this is like a bigger thing than we thought. And oh my God, people were covering it up for this long, and oh my goodness, we're just letting this happen. Like what, right? um and by and large, like one of the most influential times in or important movements in just the history of, let's call it, America, right? I know it goes past that. Since then it's been about 5 years, right? And something I want to bring up is as well intentioned as things are, and as important as things are, and as important it is to give people voices that maybe didn't have them at times where they really, like, it would have been very, very nice for them to have those voices. um let's just talk about human nature, man, right? Anytime there is an opportunity to benefit either monetarily or to get back at someone, whatever, it's going to get exploited. That's human nature, right? So if you look at the timeline, 5 years ago, this movement happens and it's still happening. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's still strong, but eventually, man, like, the way human beings are, when there's a scam happen, like there's it's going to get exploited, right? Like, people are
Of
going to
course.
look for scams, and they're going to do them. And like, how many calls do you get? Probably get a day of your car warranty, right? Like,
Yeah,
not,
right.
you know what I mean? Like, that's still a thing. So people are going to look for these things, right? And it's really, really unfortunate, but it's just the reality of human nature, of human behavior, right? So does that mean, okay, yeah, we don't listen to every accusation, we don't take every accusation seriously? Absolutely not. That's not what it means, right? um but I think the days of us completely dismissing somebody as a person, right, and throwing them into the garbage can and saying, like, let get them out of my life forever based on just an accusation, I think that's where we've got to start checking ourselves as a society, right? um because Trevor Bauer's situation isn't the only situation recently that's that type of thing has happened, right? News outlets, media outlets are incentivized by clicks, and that's about it, right? That's how they get their money, right?
Yeah.
And they know that these types of stories spread like wildfire, right? You get this guy who just come up with Cy Young Award, plays for the Dodgers in Los Angeles. this story, the Tatis is connected to it, this and that, it's gonna blow up, right? So of course it's gonna get it's gonna get attention. And yeah, these outlets are incentivized by it.
And not just incentivized by the story itself, but also incentivized to slant it and present it in a way that is going to further drive viewership.
Absolutely. Yeah. And get clicks, you know? And yeah, man, like I think most people are well-intentioned, and innocently you read something like that, and you know, you're going to get a certain type of reaction from people, right? But let's be 100% honest here. If you're sitting on your couch watching TV, right, chilling, you know, if you're having a mellow day, you read that story. Let's say you're at a 0, right? You're at a 0. You read that story, it takes you to a 10, right? That's a lot. That's a big change in emotion, a big change in just how you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. The situation between Trevor Bauer and his accuser didn't start at a 0, right? Text messages were exchanged beforehand. There was an expectation of what was going to happen. When they met, they weren't at a 0 like we were when we were sitting on the couch, right? So that's where we have to really monitor and engage. Like, okay, emotionally, like our reactions, like it's just different to them than what actually happened, right? The accusations are terrible, right? But with the information we're given, it's like, ooh, okay, like. So as things were developing, I was like, okay, well, yeah, they go to a hearing and the restraining order wasn't upheld. You know, like, well, why wasn't it upheld? The judge said, like, hey, well, there were certain things that she requested in this situation. Like, there's certain things that she essentially asked for, right? And what the judge said is like, okay, we're supposed to believe women, right? When they say no, right? Like, yes, but not taking a woman seriously when she says yes is completely detrimental to, right, taking a woman seriously when she says no, right? And if this is something things are things that she was specifically asking for, then it just makes everything a lot more gray, right? Let's at least start there. It's gray. Right. It's gray, right? And it was, as time went on, you know, people didn't move from their original position, man. They didn't. And that's, you know, I don't believe in always or never.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like I don't, you know, I really don't. There are some situations where I haven't seen an example of the other side or whatever, but I don't really believe in always and never. I think there are exceptions. I think there are this and that. So to just about everything in life, you know. So I try to keep an open mind. I'm like, okay, well, you know, let's not automatically jump to conclusions. Let's take the information we're given and give it time, and just the time that it needs, you know. So yeah, in the beginning, I was like, okay, well, this stuff is happening. You probably can't have him on a baseball field right now, right? So yeah, the administrative leave is going to happen, and guess what? He's going to get paid during that, right? All these people that in this last collective bargaining agreement are fighting for the players, that's what they fight for, right? That type of thing, right? Don't you think the Dodgers would have wanted to be off the hook of that contract last year? Well, no, they're on the hook for it because the players negotiated it, right? We're rooting for players. That's what they negotiated for. And legally, it just makes sense. Right. And all this stuff is coming out, but I don't know, Frank, like I think we're presented a real teachable moment here. You know, and some people are choosing not to learn from it. And that's kind of the most frustrating part for me.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing is you have to want to learn. You have to be teachable, like you just mentioned, and you have to have the open-mindedness and willing to learn. And that requires a certain amount of maturity. It also requires a certain amount of effort that you know ought to be willing to put into the situations, and not everyone is. Matter of fact, I would say the majority are not. And so that's why you get the kind of the polarizing society, the polarizing sports fandom, you know, that you get because of that type of situation where by rule, there's usually nuance to almost everything. You know, when they talk about the truth, right? And they say there's 3 sides to the truth, your side, my side, and the actual truth. And so giving room for that is a way better way to go with almost anything in life. Than to have hard black and white approach to it.
Yeah. And, you know, I tried to, I tried to even check myself, right? Bauer's a guy that I rooted for to be a Dodger, right? And I know his antics on Twitter, and sometimes I rooted for those too. And I was like, yeah, cool. When he came, I got some vindication when the Dodgers signed him, right? I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, stick it to all these little losers on Twitter that cry about everything, right? And then this happens, right? I remember the
Yeah.
vindication I got when the Dodgers signed Trevor Bauer. So I was like, oh, well, I can understand maybe people having vindication for an "I told you so" moment, right? I can understand that, right? But let's separate the two situations and not weigh them equally, because what you're telling me, and this is something that I tweeted, I just still cannot grasp my mind around the fact that there are people out there, by their behavior, by their words, by their tweets, by everything they've showed through this entire situation. There are people out there that would rather live in a world where Trevor Bauer is a rapist than his accuser being a liar, right? Because look, me, guilty as charged. I didn't want it to be true, right? I didn't want it from the get-go. I didn't want that to be a thing that happened. Are you kidding me? So
Right.
maybe that skewed my initial position a little bit, because Trevor Bauer is somebody that I'm aware of and familiar with, right? Somebody that pitches for my baseball team, for my favorite baseball team. I didn't want it to be true. So maybe I'm looking for the situation that, hey, could be holes in this, right? Maybe it might be easier to see those holes, right? But to just stand on the other side of it, where you're just going to die on the hill that he did this, I'm like, do you want that to be true? No, right? And unfortunately, we're pinned in a position where it was one or the other, dude. Either he did this or she lied, and it sucks because I feel like continually we're stuck in these situations for some of these people. And man, like, there's, podcasters, influencers, comedians that have been in similar situations for me. And it's like, oh my God, like it makes you think like everything that you think is true isn't. And then at the end of the day, it's like, oh, well, no, maybe some of the stuff I believe to be true was true, because, sometimes it's easy for these things to come out, and it's really easy to accuse somebody of something, not just this, anything, right? Now to prove it, and now to, that's a whole different story. But that's where I stand, man. Like it really feels like some of these people wanted this to be true because of the little vindication they got from the time when the Dodgers signed Trevor Bauer and they knew it was going to go bad, right? They felt like, oh, this is bad for the culture of the team, whatever. Yeah, this whole situation was bad for the team. Don't get me wrong, right? We're stuck in a position where we had to sell prospects in order to get a guy like Max Scherzer, and now we don't have those prospects. And then Max Scherzer didn't pitch in the NLCS because he's old and his freaking arm was falling off. Trevor Bauer would have pitched, right? So we're stuck in that situation. But for me, it's like, oh, these people, you would have rather this happened, that's at this
like
point in the
rooting
stage
for it to be true.
With all the information we're given at this point, people are still on that hill, and I'm like, whoa. At this point, it's weird. Like, it's weird for somebody to almost root for this to have happened because they don't want to walk back a little bit of the vindication they got from when the Dodgers signed Trevor Bauer.
I mean, there's certainly some hypocrisy to it too, because it's ethically and morally, you talked about the antics of Bauer and the personality and maybe character defects, if you want to call them that. Mm-hmm. And so people cry moral foul based off those characteristics he has or whatever, the behavior. And then yet they would want him to be a rapist, like you're pointing out. They would want a woman to have suffered those things.
Yep.
Just so that they can have their vindication, their "I told you so." Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's certainly something twisted about that.
Yeah, and it's no accident, man. Somebody like Trevor Bauer, with the reputation he had, was more susceptible to something like this, right? Don't you think that she knew, hey, I'll get some public backing on something like this. It's gonna be a little bit more believable for people because of other unrelated antics of his, right? People are gonna connect dots and they're gonna think, oh, this is just the type of person that this person type. The people that do this are these types of people, right? When no, I mean, like you said, everything's nuanced, and I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but let's take it seriously. Like, it is a nuanced situation. And from the get-go, I'm glad I was able to take the emotion out of it, in the sense where it's like, hey, I can actually read the article all the way through, the original one, right? And then right away we got text messages and I'm like, wait a minute, this is a little different. And from then, there were some people that just, and still, man, there's still, I can understand somebody saying like, hey, like, no matter what, you know, a man should never put his hands on a woman in a violent manner. I get it. I get that stance, right? Um, let's be honest about the times we're living in, right? Or always, right? What people do in their bedroom is up to them, right? How people are intimate is up to them as long as it's consensual. Keyword consensual, right? All the proof shows that this was all consensual. What happened, right? Not only that, she fabricated and doctored photos and stuff like that. Like that was all out there. So I understand somebody making a personal decision for their own selves and what they would want for other people is like, hey, I would never want a situation where somebody would, you know, a man would hit a woman. I get being there. I understand it, right? And I probably believe it too, you know, but people are free to live their lives in a certain way in this, you know, country, right? And you know, if somebody wants that, that's their right, you know, like that's their right. And that's, you know, doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but to think this person should be punished by the law because of, you know, what you would want, or, you know, this person shouldn't be able to, you know, pitch in the major leagues again and this and that. That's just not, I'm sorry, like people need to learn that that's just not the world we live in. You know, you have the right to believe that. Trust me, like you have the right, like, hey, that should never happen. You know, I think the world would be an easier place if that type of stuff didn't happen. You know what I mean? But, you know, that's not the reality of, you know, where we are as human beings at this point in time, right? And, you know, sexual liberty and freedom and doing what you want to do is, it's an empowering thing for a lot of people, you know. So to punish him would just throw away a lot of the progress that's been done on that side of things, you know. So we couldn't put ourselves in a position where we did that, you know. And man, like I'm just kind of disappointed in a lot of people. I'm like, man, like I wish, like, I wish, it didn't happen. We found out it didn't happen. And I'm like, oh, good thing it didn't happen. Right.
Yes.
But some people, that's just not how they feel about it. For them, it's not a good thing it didn't happen. It's like, oh no, like I can't admit that I was maybe wrong about something. And it's not a good situation, brother.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And you know, I like the way you mentioned about being teachable. It's really that, man. I think none of us are ever done learning. There's an old saying I like to try to live by. Sometimes I forget, but this certainly brings it back into mind, is the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
You know?
Once you open a door, it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
a whole other thing on the other side of this wall. Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Allow yourselves to be taught, you know, and um, there's still room for differences of opinion, but like, let's just be realistic about the world we live in and what is allowed, what's not allowed, and what's expected of us and all that stuff. Like, let's be realistic about where we're at. And then because we can't, then we can't have conversations, you know, we really can't. So, you know, what the law protects. And as it just pertains to the Dodgers, I mean, they're kind of held hostage by Major League Baseball right now. You got to think, right? I don't know what's taking them so long. I mean, yeah, okay, there's a lockout. They might have been a little busy for a while, but um, I think you know, I don't know why they haven't moved on this already. Because it really seems like the only thing holding it up is they know they're going to get public backlash from people that aren't well versed in the situation, that didn't do their, you know, their homework, right? And we can't operate in a way where we're scared of people that don't do their own homework. Like, you know what I mean? We can't. We can't. We need to be practical. We need to move forward. We need to do all this. So, so it's either they're gonna, you know, wait for a good time to release that information, and you know he's gonna be back on the field, or they're gonna do something that's not right, not appropriate, and punishing him inappropriately. But you know he's gonna appeal something like that, right? Because at that point, once you appeal it, you got to find the precedent. You got to say this is the reason, this, and that. And I don't think MLB stands a chance, to be honest, um, because you know there's guys have done worse things for less for less punishments, you know, and so we'll see where it goes. We have our eyes kind of close to that, and you know, how his contract ties on into all of this. You know, people say like, oh, it was a bad contract, this, and that. Guys, the contract they signed to him to made this so much less of a worse situation than it could have been.
Yes.
Because he was on the hook for about what $30 million a year over about 3 years, right? Something like that. But it's an option after each year, right? So yeah, we bit the bullet for the year he was under investigation, right? But this isn't some long-term deal that he's in, right? Like this is a contract that he agreed to kind of bet on himself year after year after year. And that when you think of win-win situations, right? Back then it's like, oh, well, this could have been an injury, you know, let's call it an injury. Let's say he was out that time because of an injury. That's what makes this contract structure so beneficial, right? Because after this, he's only on the hook for another year. But hopefully he's been pitching well enough to where we would want him back. You know, like that's the situation we want to be in. So I don't know, man. I know it's like an emotionally charged subject because it's like, man, like, dude, everybody hears things, you know, but I don't know, like anytime any type of big breaking news happens, like what I've learned to do is kind of just, okay, well, what state am I in right now to be receiving this information? Right? Like, am I, you know, already, is something else bothering me right now that this can allow me to react in a different way because of it, you know? Because when I got the Trevor Bauer news, I was, like I said, I was on my couch, right? Let's call that a 0 resting state, you know? But, you know, so that's the advice I would give people. Like, all right, when something like this comes out, like, you know, be aware of a position you might be in to maybe look at things a little bit differently than maybe what they are, you know, and try to be as logical as you can, man. I know it's not easy. I know it takes a lot of mental training. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of caring about that and making that a priority. But, you know, the only way you're allowed yourself to be as logical as possible is to be to be not as emotional as possible. You know what I mean? Like, it's take the emotion out of things, and we're emotional beings for a reason, right? And that's there for a reason, you know. But I don't know, man. It's a situation that's been brewing, and I just wish people were better about it, dude. I wish they were, man. Because it's not what he was accused of, you know. And I think we should be glad that it wasn't versus the alternative. But I don't know if you have anything else to add to that situation.
No, that covers a lot, man. And I think people, I don't think there's anyone indifferent about that whole matter. So I think it's a segment that should, you know, be people, especially the people that have proven to listen, can have some sense of appreciation for the topic.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, we'd like for you guys to add to the conversation as well. If there's something you feel like we didn't mention that should have been mentioned in these types of things, or any topic, you know, like, reply to us, at us, you know, it's at Let's Be Frank Pod, pretty much on everything. So be a part of that conversation, because, you know, we're still taking in information about different things, you know, and we're not stuck in our positions necessarily, but at some point you get enough information about something, you can draw a pretty reasonable conclusion, you know. So but yeah, if you feel like there's something that, hey, they didn't mention this part of this situation that I think is important, like, bring it, tell me, because that's just going to make our stance just more accurate. So but yeah, man, any other Dodger related stuff do you think we need to touch on, or we should leave it
next episode,
on the next episode of season 5 of the Let's Be Frank podcast, season 5, right? Of the season 6, 5, 6, season 5. Let's Be Frank podcast.
We'll get it straight.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But thanks for joining us again. Franchise, it's you know, I'm glad we were able to do this again. And you know, our plans to do it more consistently, right? So we'll find some time weekly to do this. And yeah, so we'll post this and video too. Yeah, we have video, we have audio. So those will go out accordingly. But again, I mean, thanks for the interaction. I think next week's probably a good time to do our first mailbag of the season. Get some questions in here. That way it's not just us rambling about what we think is important. We want to know what you guys think is important to talk about too. So thanks for joining us this far. And yeah, we're excited for another season of Dodger baseball. So with that, we are the Franks. You are the franchise. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.